All right, let's dive right in, shall we? Chelsea versus Newcastle at Stamford Bridge. Talk about a match with some serious tension.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Coming off losses, both teams were desperate for a win.
And with that Carabao Cup rematch on the horizon, the stakes were even higher, wouldn't you say?
For sure. I think that definitely added to the intensity.
We're going to unpack all the action, from the lineup choices, some of them real head-scratchers, to the moments that had everyone glued to their seats.
Looking at both teams coming in, it was clear they had something to prove. Chelsea's form had been a bit up and down.
Yeah, a draw with Nottingham Forest, then a loss against Liverpool.
But then they bounced back with a pretty convincing win against Panathinaikos in the Europa Conference League.
And let's not forget, they completely changed their lineup for that European match, resting key players, specifically for this Newcastle clash. Seems like they had their priorities straight.
Oh, absolutely. They knew how crucial this match was. Newcastle, on the other hand, they were trying to break out of a slump.
4 games without a win in the Premier League? That's got to weigh on you.
Definitely. That draw with Everton, the loss at home to Brighton, tough results for them.
But here's the thing. This was after they actually beat Chelsea earlier this season at St. James's Park.
Makes you wonder what changed, right?
And let's not forget the history at Stamford Bridge. Newcastle hasn't won there since 2012.
A tough place for them to get a result, historically speaking.
But if you look at their recent head-to-head, it's actually pretty even. 2 wins for Chelsea, 2 for Newcastle, and 1 draw in their last 5 meetings.
Coming into this match, it felt like anyone's game.
Totally unpredictable. And then the lineup decisions came out, and things got even more interesting. Chelsea's manager, Enzo Maresca, made some bold choices.
Lavia keeping his place after that good performance, essentially sending Enzo Fernandez to the bench.
You don't see a big signing like Enzo Fernandez on the bench every day.
Sends a message, doesn't it?
Definitely. Form over reputation. Reece James held on to his starting spot. Neto got the nod over Sancho on the left wing, and Fofana was back from suspension.
Meanwhile, Newcastle's manager, Eddie Howe, had his work cut out for him. Injuries were a major factor.
Trippier, Lascelles, Botman, and Dubravka all out, and Callum Wilson's return was delayed.
A tough situation for any manager. But what really stood out to me was his decision to start Livramento and Hall.
Those two, former Chelsea Academy players, facing their old club.
The storylines write themselves, don't they?
It just added another layer to an already compelling match. But those lineup decisions, especially for Newcastle, really seemed to impact the game early on.
From the first whistle, Chelsea set the tone, pressing high, trying to take advantage of the space behind Newcastle's high defensive line.
And they almost had a breakthrough right away.
Cole Palmer thought he'd put Chelsea ahead in those opening minutes.
But then VAR stepped in. Offside. It was incredibly close, though.
A tough break for Chelsea, but a wake-up call for Newcastle.
Showed how risky that high line can be against a team with pace and precision in attack.
Definitely. You could see Eddie Howe on the sidelines, urging his defenders to tighten up, be more aware of those runs in behind.
But Newcastle, despite that scare, they stuck to their game plan. And they eventually found their way back into the match.
That equalizer from Alexander Isak, that was something special.
It really was a fantastic goal.
Showcased his positional awareness, his movement, and that clinical finishing.
And it all started with a cross from, of all people, Lewis Hall, the former Chelsea player.
The irony. Isak's run was perfectly timed, slipped in behind the defense, and finished with such composure.
You have to wonder what the Chelsea fans were thinking. Their former academy player setting up the equalizer.
I bet there were some mixed emotions in the stands, but tactically speaking, that goal exposed the risk in Newcastle's high defensive line.
If they're not perfectly in sync, one well-timed run can undo all their hard work.
Exactly. It was a turning point in the match, gave Newcastle energy, put Chelsea on the back foot a bit. Makes you wonder, with the Carabao Cup coming up, will Newcastle stick with this high-risk, high-reward defense?
Knowing that Chelsea will be studying this match, looking to exploit those same weaknesses.
That's the question, isn't it? But first, we need to talk more about Isak's performance. That goal was just the beginning. He was a menace all game long. His movement off the ball, how he held up play, his link-up with teammates.
It makes you think maybe Newcastle's struggles haven't been about lacking creativity in attack, but more about not finishing those chances.
I think you've hit the nail on the head there. They've been creating, just haven't been able to convert. And Isak's performance, well, it suggests maybe they're turning a corner.
Speaking of which, we've had a lot of fans asking where they can catch replays of this match.
Plenty of options, luckily. In the UK, you've got Sky Sports Main Event, Sky Sports Premier League, or any of Sky's streaming services.
And for our U.S. listeners,
Fubo TV, USA Network, and Telemundo should have you covered.
What about those tuning in from India?
Star Sports Select HD2 and Disney Plus Hotstar. And for those elsewhere, we've got a full list of international broadcasters and streaming services in the source material.
Fantastic. Another question we've seen popping up a lot is about those lineup decisions we talked about. Fans are curious, did those choices really affect the outcome?
It's tough to say definitively, but I think they definitely played a part. Chelsea resting players for their midweek European game, maybe that backfired a bit.
They started strong but seemed to lose that edge as the match went on.
It's a balancing act, isn't it? Managing fatigue, prioritizing different competitions, trying to anticipate the opponent's tactics.
Absolutely. And for Newcastle, those forced changes due to injuries meant they had to field a less experienced defense. And it showed at times.
But the inclusion of those former Chelsea youngsters, that added a whole other dimension. Hall's assist for the equalizer proves that.
Almost poetic, isn't it? Coming back to haunt their old club adds a level of drama you just can't script. But looking ahead to the Carabao Cup rematch, do you think we'll see any major tactical shifts from either side?
I think they'll have to. Chelsea will need to find a way to contain Isak, neutralize Newcastle's high press. Maybe we'll drop deeper defensively, try to draw Newcastle out and hit them on the counter.
Playing to the strengths of their fast attackers. And it could force Newcastle to rethink that high defensive line. What about Eddie Howe? What do you think he'll do?
He's a smart manager. He'll have learned from this match. Wouldn't be surprised to see Newcastle press less aggressively, focus more on being solid at the back, especially at home. They might even target the space Chelsea's attacking fullbacks often leave behind.
It's like a chess match, each manager trying to outmaneuver the other. And for us fans, it makes for such a thrilling spectacle.
Exactly. And it shows the depth and complexity of the game. It's not just about individual talent. It's about strategy, adaptation, and a little bit of luck.
Now, there's been a lot of talk online about how Chelsea used their fullbacks in this match. James and Gusto pushing high up the pitch, created some chances, but also left gaps at the back. What are your thoughts on that tactic?
It's Enzo Maresca's signature style. And when it clicks, it's very effective. Stretches the opposition, creates overloads out wide, gives Chelsea's midfielders space to work their magic.
But like you said earlier, it comes with risks, especially against a team like Newcastle that can counter quickly.
Precisely. And that's where the tactical battle gets really interesting. Do you stick with what you know, what's worked before, or do you adjust to counter your opponent's strengths? It's a gamble every manager has to make.
And for us viewers, it's what keeps us on the edge of our seats. Knowing the strengths and weaknesses, analyzing those key tactical decisions, it adds another dimension to watching the game unfold.
Like you're an armchair manager, second-guessing every move. And that's what we encourage you to do. Think critically, engage with the game on a deeper level. Don't just watch, observe, analyze, discuss. It's what makes football so captivating.
Couldn't agree more. And that brings us to another great question from a listener. They're asking about the broader implications of this match, especially in light of Chelsea's squad depth. They want to know, do you think Chelsea have a real advantage in cup competitions like the Carabao Cup, where a packed schedule can really take its toll on teams with smaller squads?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question, and it's something we touched on earlier when talking about Chelsea's decision to rest those players.
It's a luxury, no doubt.
Yeah.
Chelsea's invested a lot to build a squad that's got depth in pretty much every position.
They can rotate, keep players fresh, minimize that risk of injuries. In a cup competition like the Carabao Cup, where the games come thick and fast,
That depth, it becomes a huge advantage.
they can put out strong lineups, even if some players are out because they're tired or have a knock.
Gives them an edge for sure.
It does. And I feel like we saw that in this match, even without some of their big names, they controlled a lot of the game, created chances.
So you're thinking Chelsea's depth could be the deciding factor in the Carabao Cup. It's certainly a factor worth considering. Okay, let's bring it all together. We've broken down the match, looked at those key moments, the tactics, what this means for that Carabao Cup rematch. But the big question, the one everyone wants to know, predictions. Who do you see coming out on top at St. James's Park?
Putting me on the spot now. Predictions in football, well, they're always a bit of a gamble.
I know. But humor me. What's your gut feeling?
If I had to pick, I'd probably lean towards Chelsea. Their squad depth, experience in those big games, and their ability to adapt tactically, I think it gives them a slight advantage.
But you're not ruling out Newcastle completely.
Not at all. They'll have that home crowd behind them. They'll be eager to get revenge for this result. And they've got a player like Isak who can change the game in an instant.
You're going to be an exciting rematch, that's for sure.
Definitely. And that's what's so great about cup competitions, right? The unpredictability, the potential for upsets, the chance for a team to really make a statement.
Absolutely. And what about the bigger picture? How do you see both teams doing for the rest of the season?
I think Chelsea are looking good. They've got a nice mix of youth and experience, a manager who's not afraid to make the tough calls, and a squad that can compete on all fronts.
So you're predicting a good season for the Blues.
I think they've got the potential to do really well.
What about Newcastle? Can they turn things around, get back to winning ways?
I wouldn't count them out. They've shown they can go toe-to-toe with the best teams in the league. It's about finding that consistency, that killer instinct in front of goal.
And getting some of those key players back from injury.
Exactly.
So in the Premier League, it's all still to play for.
It is. That's what makes it so exciting. The drama, the passion, all those storylines unfolding.
Couldn't have put it better myself. But before we wrap up, I want to turn it back to our listeners. What are your predictions for the Carabao Cup rematch? Do you agree with what our experts saying about how each team will do? Head over to our social media pages and let us know. We love hearing your thoughts, getting into those passionate football debates.
It's what makes it fun.
And on that note, it's time for us to sign off. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, keep exploring, keep analyzing, and keep that love for the beautiful game alive.
Well said.
See you next time for another deep dive.